it's just whatever you want to do. The creativity angle. He never. I want to say never because I don't know the inner brain of Steve Jobs. But it was never about the money. It was always about how can we change the world? How can we make this different? How can we think different, as Mike said? So it's just a tremendous loss. And and finally, I was reading an article yesterday. It turns out that Steve knew he was dying, as you guys have mentioned earlier, and he didn't want to go without and leave the company hanging. So he did he called it either Steve Jobs University or DNA University. Have you heard anything about that yet?
No. Didn't hear about that. And yeah, I was going to say, what's the outlook? What's the future without Steve Jobs for Apple?
And we don't know. Obviously, it's impossible to know. But he did do this. I think he called it DNA University. I think I was reading about it in the New York Times. He came up with a class curriculum, a course curriculum for the way he thinks. And they've been teaching it to the people that work there, the executives that work there, for almost 2 years now. So the idea is to try to get everybody to think the way that he thought, and never be afraid to try something new and different. Now, I don't want to. Yeah, I've heard the other stories too. I've heard stories like Steve was taking the elevator down. Actually, I heard he was taking the elevator up to his office one time. Somebody said, "Good morning, Mr." to him, and he said, "Oh, hi, what's your name?" And they told him, and he said, "What do you do?" And they said, and he, "What do you do?" And they said, He goes, "Well, if you don't know what you do, I don't need you. You're fired."
Really?
So I've heard that he was not. He was tyrannical in that sense. That he wasn't the greatest guy to work for on that level. So I think creative geniuses just tend to be like that. They're just not moving in their direction constantly. They have absolutely no regard for you.
Is he irreplaceable then? I mean, you could try to teach somebody your thought process, but, everybody's mind works differently. Does there need to be a guy who's going to step in and to be the new Steve Jobs, or, can this company continue on the path?
Well, I'm going to go back to what Mike said a few minutes ago, which was that, everybody's coming out with tablets now to compete with the iPad. And every tablet that has come out has been a miserable failure. Not a miserable failure per se, but one of the reviews I read on one of the latest, greatest, hottest pads that came out, tablets that came out, was that, it's a nice tablet, but it's nowhere near a number 2 to an iPad. It's just, if this is number 2, there's still a quantum leap ahead of it. So that's what they're up against. And if you don't remember what happened about, I don't think it was months ago with the HP tablet. They came out with a tablet, and it was about 2 weeks later that they cut the price to, came out I think at $400 or $500. They cut the price to $100 or $150, depending on the model that you wanted, and said, we can't compete. The tablet was on the market for 2 weeks before HP pulled the plug on it.
Wow.
How can you, who can come up with that kind of technology on a regular basis? He could. Who else can do it? That's a mystery. That's the unanswered million-dollar question. And if I could answer that question, I'd be on CNBC. I wouldn't be on your show.
Oh boy.